When you think of World War II spies, you probably picture some guy in a trench coat, maybe a James Bond prototype, sneaking around with a silly little camera. But the deadliest, most effective, and most feared agents of the entire war weren't men at all. We're talking about women the Gestapo were so terrified of, they gave them nicknames and put million-franc bounties on their heads. These women were more than just spies. They were assassins, saboteurs, and master manipulators who changed the course of the war. I'm going to tell you about the American socialite who seduced her way to the entire Vichy French naval codes, the woman who literally chewed off her own tongue to escape an interrogation, and the agent the Gestapo called the White Mouse who killed an SS guard with her bare hands. These are the most dangerous female spies of World War II, and we're starting with an absolute legend who hid top secret intelligence in her underwear while charming the Nazi high command. Imagine you're a world-famous celebrity. You're a singer, a dancer, an icon. You sell out theaters across Europe, and high-ranking officials from every country are desperate to be seen with you. Now imagine you use that fame as the perfect cover for espionage. That was Josephine Baker. When the war broke out, the American-born superstar living in Paris was recruited by French intelligence. And her reaction? France made me what I am. I will be grateful forever. The people of Paris have given me their hearts, and I am ready to give them my life. What an absolute queen! So what did she do? She weaponized her fame. Baker would attend lavish parties at embassies, charming Nazi officials, Italian diplomats, and anyone who mattered. These guys, completely starstruck, would just spill everything to her, assuming she was just a performer. But she was memorizing every detail, every troop movement, every whispered plan. Here's where it gets truly wild. She needed a way to get this information to the Allies, so she would write the secrets in invisible ink on her sheet music. She knew that no border guard was going to risk ticking off a global superstar by taking away her music. It was the perfect disguise. For even more sensitive documents, she'd pin them to her underwear, correctly gambling that no guard would dare to search her that intimately. She was literally smuggling state secrets right under their noses, protected by nothing but her own celebrity status. It was a level of audacity that is just breathtaking. But as incredible as Josephine Baker's story is, it's not even close to the most insane story we have today. Stick around because a little later I'm going to tell you about a woman agent so slippery the Gestapo called her the White Mouse, who once killed an elite SS guard with nothing but her bare hands. No, I am not kidding. But first, let's talk about a woman who went from selling perfume to becoming a lethal saboteur. Of course, not every spy was a world-famous celebrity. Many were ordinary people pushed into extraordinary circumstances. Meet Violette Szabo. Before the war, she was working the perfume counter at a department store in Brixton. She was a regular person. Then she met and married a French army officer who was killed in action, leaving her a widow and a single mother. Fueled by grief and rage, she volunteered for the Special Operations Executive, or SOE, Britain's ultra-secret organization dedicated to sabotage behind enemy lines. They saw in her a fire and a fluency in French that made her the perfect candidate. And if you're watching this, you're the perfect candidate for this channel. Hit subscribe. She was trained in firearms, explosives, and hand-to-hand combat, and was parachuted into occupied France not once, but twice. Her job was to blow up bridges and railways and generally cause as much chaos as possible for the Germans. On her second mission, she was captured after a brutal firefight where she provided covering fire for her partner to escape, holding off the enemy with her Sten gun until she ran out of ammunition. She was just 23 years old. Alright, let's talk about the real-life femme fatale. Amy Elizabeth Thorpe, codenamed Cynthia, was an American socialite who basically seduced her way to some of the most valuable intelligence of the entire war. And let's be real, the fact that her work revolved around sleeping with the enemy makes some people uncomfortable, but what she did was absolutely critical. Her main target was the Vichy French embassy in Washington, D.C., which was officially neutral, but secretly crawling with pro-Nazi sympathizers. Cynthia's mission was to get her hands on their naval codebooks, and we're not talking about some flimsy pamphlets here. These were the keys to the entire Vichy fleet. Getting them would allow the Allies to plan the invasion of North Africa. So what does she do? She identifies a key press attaché at the embassy and begins a full-blown affair with him. Over months, she manipulated him into not only falling in love with her, but also agreeing to help her. Her plan was pure Hollywood. She convinced him to let a locksmith, disguised as her lover, into the embassy late at night to crack the safe. I mean, can you even imagine the guts that takes? They broke in, photographed the code books, and got out. But that wasn't enough. They needed the actual books. In a second, even more insane heist, she arranged for the codes to be taken out, photographed again page by page, and returned before morning. All thanks to her complete control over a lovesick diplomat. Some spies gather intelligence, others blow up bridges, and some just straight up assassinate Nazis. Hannie Schaft was a law student at the University of Amsterdam when the Germans invaded. After refusing to sign a pledge of allegiance to the new regime, she dropped out and joined a communist resistance cell. They quickly realized Hannie wasn't just good for courier work. She was cold-bloodedly effective as an assassin. Known to the Nazis only as the girl with the red hair, she became one of their most wanted targets. She would bike up to a Nazi official or a Dutch collaborator, pull out a pistol, execute them in broad daylight, and then just disappear into the crowd. She was an expert at disguise, often wearing glasses and dyeing her distinctive red hair black to avoid detection. She participated in dozens of assassinations and sabotage missions, becoming a terrifying legend to the collaborationist police. Her motto was, "I shoot better when I'm angry." Eventually, she was captured at a military checkpoint and executed, just 3 weeks before the war ended. Her final words after one of her executioners wounded her were reportedly, "I'm a better shot." Savage. Hannie's method was brutally direct. But direct action wasn't the only way to fight. The next agent is one of the most tragic and inspiring stories of the entire war. Noor Inayat Khan was literally a princess, a descendant of Indian royalty. She was also a Sufi pacifist, a musician, and a writer of children's books. She was, by all accounts, a gentle and dreamy soul who believed in nonviolence. So how in the world did she end up as one of the SOE's most vital radio operators in Paris? Because her hatred of Nazi tyranny was even stronger than her commitment to pacifism. Recruited for her flawless French and radio skills, she was given the codename Madeleine. Her trainers had serious doubts about her. They thought she was too frail, too honest, too emotionally fragile for the brutal world of espionage. They were wrong. When she was sent to Paris, the spy network she was supposed to join was immediately betrayed and arrested, one by one. Soon, Noor was the last British radio operator left in the entire city. London begged her to come home, but she refused. For months, she was a ghost, dragging her heavy radio transmitter from safe house to safe house, constantly on a run, doing the work of 6 agents all by herself. She was the only link between the entire Parisian resistance and London. She knew the average life of a radio operator was 6 weeks. She lasted for 5 months before she was finally betrayed by a French collaborator. She never gave up a single piece of information, even under torture. While some agents were focused on sabotage, Andre de Jong was focused on saving lives. And to do it, she built nothing short of an escape superhighway right under the Nazis' noses. At just 24 years old, this Belgian nurse created one of the most incredible achievements of the entire resistance movement, the Comet Line. Don't picture a handful of people hiding in an attic. The Comet Line was a full-blown underground railroad, a superhighway for downed Allied airmen. It stretched from the cities of Belgium and France over the treacherous Pyrenees Mountains and into the safety of neutral Spain. And Andre, a woman barely out of her teens, was the mastermind behind the whole thing. She personally escorted over 100 airmen across the mountains, facing blizzards, German patrols, and the constant threat of betrayal. Think about the logistics. She had to coordinate a network of hundreds of volunteers, providing safe houses, food, and forged documents across 3 countries. It was a massive, impossibly complex operation run by a young woman with 0 formal training. She was captured in 1943 and survived the infamous Ravensbrück concentration camp. When the Allies finally liberated her, they just couldn't believe that this small, unassuming woman had been the legendary leader of the Comet Line. Building an escape route for others is one thing, but how do you escape when you're already in a Gestapo interrogation room? The next spy on our list had a method so hardcore, I guarantee you've never heard anything like it. Alright, buckle up, because this story is absolutely insane. Krystyna Skarbek, also known as Christine Granville, was a Polish countess, a beauty queen, and arguably Britain's first and longest-serving female special agent. And she was a force of nature. This is the woman who was reportedly Churchill's favorite spy. Her list of accomplishments is just ridiculous. She skied over the snow-covered mountains from Hungary into Nazi-occupied Poland to deliver propaganda. She smuggled a British agent across Europe in the trunk of her car. But her defining moment, the story that perfectly captures her iron will, came when she was arrested by the Gestapo in Hungary. During the interrogation, knowing that torture was coming, she did something unthinkable. She bit down on her own tongue hard. So hard that she started to bleed profusely from the mouth. She then faked a violent coughing fit, spitting blood everywhere and pretending she had advanced tuberculosis. The Gestapo, terrified of catching the deadly disease, literally kicked her out of the building. Let me repeat that. She got out of a Gestapo interrogation by chewing her own tongue and faking a disease. What would you even do in a situation like that? The presence of mind is just on another planet. If the Nazi regime had a public enemies list for spies, Virginia Hall would have been #1 with a bullet. The Gestapo knew her only as the Limping Lady, and they considered her the most dangerous of all Allied agents in France. They were so obsessed with catching her that the infamous Gestapo chief Klaus Barbie personally ordered, "I would give anything to get my hands on that limping Canadian bitch." Except she wasn't Canadian, and she was always one step ahead. Virginia was an American who had lost her leg in a hunting accident years before the war. She wore a clunky, heavy wooden prosthetic leg she nicknamed Cuthbert. Now, you'd think this would make her, a little conspicuous for a spy, but Virginia turned her disability into her strength. People underestimated her. They didn't look twice at the woman with the limp, but she was a master of disguise and a genius at organizing resistance. She built spy networks, armed and trained French resistance groups, and coordinated parachute drops of weapons and supplies. She was the central nervous system for SOE operations in large parts of France. When things got too hot and the Nazis were closing in, she had to escape. This meant walking over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, in the middle of winter, with a prosthetic leg. Her guide told her the leg would be too much of a liability, and her response was, "If Cuthbert is a nuisance, I will detach him and carry him." Whew. She made it. And then, because she was Virginia Hall, she demanded to be sent back into France for the D-Day invasion. She was an absolute legend. We've finally arrived at Nancy Wake. The Gestapo called her the White Mouse because she was so incredibly skilled at evading capture. They put a 5 million franc bounty on her head, and every single franc of that bounty was earned. Nancy was an Australian journalist living in France when the war started. She immediately joined the resistance as a courier, but her real talents came to light after she escaped to Britain and joined the SOE. They trained her and parachuted her back into France to lead a 7,000-strong group of resistance fighters. She became their commander, their leader, the one who dished out assignments and led raids. She was famous for being able to outdrink all the men under her command. But let's get to the story, the one that made her a legend. During a raid on a German gun factory, one of her sentries raised an alarm. An SS guard saw him and was about to bayonet him. Nancy, seeing this happen, didn't hesitate. She didn't have a gun on her, she just acted. She used a judo chop style move to the guard's neck, a move she'd been taught in training but had never used. It shattered his larynx. He was dead before he hit the ground. She killed an SS soldier with her bare hands to save her man. Could you even imagine having that kind of courage? And that's not even her only insane story. Another time, she rode a bicycle for over 500 kilometers through German-held territory and passed multiple checkpoints to deliver a message and re-establish contact after her radio operator was forced to destroy his codes. She did the entire trip in just 72 hours. When she got back, one of her fellow officers said he hoped all the trees she passed were of the right species. She just looked at him and said, "Don't be a bloody fool. I couldn't have cared less if they were all made of bloody broccoli." That was Nancy Wake. This last story shifts the focus from physical violence to something just as powerful: unbelievable mental fortitude. Odette Sansom was a French-born housewife living in England with her 3 daughters. She was a civilian, but after hearing a call for people with knowledge of France to send in photographs, she accidentally sent her letter to the wrong military department and ended up on the radar of the SOE. They recruited her. She was sent to France and worked as a courier for a spy network. But eventually, the network was compromised, and she was captured by the Gestapo along with her commanding officer, Peter Churchill. Yes, his last name was Churchill, which is very important. Odette was brutally tortured. They pulled out all of her toenails with pliers and branded her back with a red-hot poker. Through all of this, she revealed absolutely nothing. But she knew she needed a way to stay alive, so she concocted the most brilliant lie. She told her captors that Peter Churchill was the nephew of Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and that she was Peter's wife. She insisted that she was the real brains of the operation and that he knew nothing, hoping to save him. The Nazis, believing they had captured a valuable political prisoner related to the British Prime Minister, kept her alive. They thought they could use her as a bargaining chip. It was a complete fabrication, born of desperation and genius, and it's the only reason she survived the war. So, from socialites to assassins, these women did more than just participate in the war. They were shaping its outcome in ways we're only now beginning to fully appreciate. And as incredible as these spies were, it raises a question. What happened to the men they were fighting? The high-ranking Nazi generals who were captured when the war finally ended? Did they all face justice, or did some of them get away with it? Well, the story of what actually happened to Hitler's top brass is even more shocking than you think. So click this video right here, because the secret deals, the bizarre escapes, and the cold-blooded betrayals that happened after the war was over are an entirely different kind of battlefield.